Welcome to Werezilla's Retrospective. I'm your host, Werezilla. I know, June is over, but as far as I'm concerned, we still have one more entry in Uncharted Month to get through. Roll the intro. Now, unlike the last game, mixed feelings on the player's part is probably intentional this time around.
There's a lot about the fourth game that feels like the events of the entire series wasn't planned out from the start. There are elements that feel like they should have been there from the beginning, and I'm not just talking about the character of Sam, who I'll elaborate more on the plot recap, but also gameplay elements that make you wonder from a story perspective why we didn't have a roughly similar element in the original trilogy. There's also the time gap between the release of all these games. Drake's Fortune came out in 2007, Among Thieves 2 years later in 2009, and then another 2 years in 2011 for when Drake's Deception came out. Breaking the usual cycle by quite a bit can make anyone suspicious. There's also the fact Naughty Dog has never had a franchise last longer than a single console generation, so seeing a new game on the PS4 shows that if nothing else, they are confident in this game.
Which, depending on your mood, could lead to one of two possibilities. Either vindication because you agree with the developers, or you think they're jerking themselves off over how great they are. Let us begin.
I'll give the game this: the main menu certainly sets a different tone than the previous main menus, going for something much more ominous instead of a grand adventure. This continues into the game itself, where Nate is driving a boat during a storm, evading and ramming enemy boats before capsizing. We cut to several years earlier when Nate was a child, he living in an orphanage and having gotten himself in trouble with one of the nuns.
No matter what I try, you seem insistent on going down the same sad road as your brother.
Wait, what? Brother? Yes, it turns out Nate had a previously unmentioned brother. You think that would have been brought up in the previous game since we were focusing on Nate's past. Kind of, we didn't get a lot once we were past the halfway point. One climbing tutorial later, we see Nate's brother Sam got himself a motorbike, but more importantly, discovered who bought out some of their dead mother's old stuff. But before we see them retrieve her things, however, we cut back to their adulthood, presumably before the events of the first game. Actually, I take that back. This is definitely before the events of the first game, since Nate, Sam, and another associate of theirs, a guy by the name of Rafe, are in a Panamanian jail.
Unless you want to end up in a Panamanian jail, we should probably handle this ourselves.
What's worse?
You obviously haven't been in a Panamanian jail.
Yeah. So Nate finds a crucifix, not of Jesus, but of one of the thieves that were crucified along with him, St. Dismas, giving them their first clue to find the treasure of Henry Avery. That is to say, the notorious pirate captain. This would be a very different game if they were following the trail of Bugs Bunny animator Tex Avery. Turns out the corrupt warden of the place is in on their plan, having been the one who got them into prison in the first place, but wants a cut of the treasure. The Drake brothers are willing to placate him, but Rafe isn't.
And if you ever cross me
Naturally, killing the guy in charge, the only person who was in on their plan, leads to a chase with the guards as they escape. Unfortunately, Sam is shot and falls off a ledge. I like the musical choice after this. It's really somber and shows off just how broken up Nate is over this. I also like the opening credits, callbacks to the previous games on what looks like a treasure map.
It's kind of what I would expect for the opening credits to be in an Uncharted movie, which has a lot more significance than you would think.
15 years pass, and we cut to the present day, where it looks like Nate is adventuring once again, since we opened the first game underwater, but it's a bait and switch. He's actually working for a salvage crew. Turns out he's working a job that's actually legal, and he and Elena are living a relatively normal life. Nate's boss wants him to get involved in a salvage operation in Malaysia, but Nate is insistent on voiding his criminal past, so he refuses since they don't have a permit for the job, despite Elena being okay with that. Once again, I like this bit where Nate looks around his attic full of little things from past games, including things that are both collectible treasures that were scattered out at various levels, which still exist in this game, and more major things like amber from the Tree of Life. But we're not just reminiscing about the past games, we're also reminiscing about other Naughty Dog games, since after dinner, Nate and Elena play some Crash Bandicoot. And the controls even switch to how it's played in the original PlayStation, i.e. using the D-pad instead of the analog stick, making running and jumping awkward. As if to say, look how far we come. You could say it's self-indulgent, but to be honest, I like this segment. It's neat seeing people who've spent years adventuring living normal lives, and I wouldn't mind a longer segment or some kind of DLC like this. A $5 or $10 DLC, let's not go overboard after all, this isn't an EA game. Of course, we couldn't have the entire game be like this, as things become more complicated when Sam shows up alive at Nate's office. Turns out the doctors at the prison patched him back up, for some reason, and he eventually found himself as a cellmate with a drug lord known as Hector Alcazar. Alcazar believes Sam about Captain Avery's treasure and takes Sam with him when he escapes the prison in one of the few instances where you play as someone other than Nate, and then threatens him.
We'll find it. I swear. How long? 6 months. People are lazy. They always ask for more time than they actually need. 3 months.
3 months is
3 months. Half the treasure. Can you do it? Say it.
3 months, half the treasure.
Now, if you run and try to hide the treasure, or do something really stupid like go to the authorities, I'll know. And when you least expect it, I will be there. At that point, death is not a mercy I will grant you.
As an aside, I like affably evil characters, so if nothing else, Alcazar does a good job being a looming threat despite limited screen time, that I find him to be 100 times more memorable than Roman from the first game. Fortunately, Sam has found out about one of Avery's crosses is going on the black market auction so they can resume the search. Sully helps them sneak into the auction house, and there is some tension regarding Sam not trusting Sully as much as Nate, which is a huge red flag for anyone paying attention. He also makes a pretty good joke that in hindsight, he couldn't have made if this game came out on its regular schedule.
Know what I love about partying with a bunch of crooks?
What's that?
Nobody cares if you smoke indoors.
And it just occurred to me that we've gone a whole 5 minutes without running into a character who is played by an actor that was also in the Dragon Age series. Let's fix that, shall we?
Hardly recognize you out of your fatigues.
Yeah. You know how it is? Every once in a while, a job requires us to get all dolled up. It's a common name. Half the girls in the Merchants Guild are named Bianca. The other half are named Helga. I lucked out.
This is Nadine, head of a mercenary company that is working with Rafe, who is also here to bid on the cross. He threatens Sully, showing he's about as unhinged as he was 15 years earlier. While Sully buys them time for the Drake brothers, Nate cuts the power so Sam can get in close and swipe the cross. Inside, they find a map to Avery's treasure in the St. Dismas Cathedral. Rafe has already used his family wealth to buy out the land and to spend the last 15 years looking. I'm not sure how he hasn't found it yet, since he's had a lot longer to look than Lazarevich in the second game. Especially since Nate points out they haven't checked the nearby graveyard, which he and Sam start searching. Especially since after lots of climbing, jumping, sliding down rock faces, and solving puzzles, they learn it's under the cathedral. Look, even if the next clue was in the graveyard, that wouldn't matter if they spent 15 years tearing the place apart. That said, I do like how exploration is implemented. We were introduced to the grappling hook in the flashback, and it's used quite a bit over the course of this game. It makes you question why Nate didn't bring one on his earlier games, especially since he was shown using one in the flashback. The puzzle solving is also improved since Nate is shown sketching things down as he travels that end up helping him solve them. Nice touch. As they search, they overhear a conversation between Rafe and Nadine, the latter of whom is sick of trying to do things subtly and wants to start using more dynamite. Unsurprisingly, as Nate and Sam find the map leading to Madagascar, this leads to Nadine finding the same info by blowing her way in. Sam tricks her into activating one of Avery's booby traps,
Amazing. A booby trap that actually catches boobies.
which gives them the opportunity to escape. Reconvening with Sully, they realize Avery deliberately left clues behind for worthy pirates to join him and his dreams of creating a pirate colony, Libertalia. They make their way to Madagascar, and I was prepared to make a joke about how there are no lemur packs dancing around in the wilds, but here they are. It also leads to the first time we've ever had a chance to explore a much larger area like this. It's still technically linear, but it's a nice change of pace. And the journal improvements continue as there are optional areas that reveal more of the pirate captains that were part of Avery's plans. Based on an image of one of Avery's coins they got back at the cathedral, they narrowed down 2 towers to check, with Nate and Sully going after one while Sam goes after alone with another. Now, based on what happened in the last game, I expected Nate and Sully to find nothing and have to go back to Sam's tower afterwards. However, it turns out Nate and Sully were the ones on the right track, since their tower is the one that leads to the island Libertalia is located. And then Nate unintentionally gives the info away to Rafe since he took pictures of the clues on his phone, which Rafe hacks, and then uses them to track Nate and Sam, leading to a car chase. Oops.
There's a reason I say Nathan has both good and bad luck at the same time. He can't have something good happen to him without something bad immediately happening afterwards.
This truck chase scene is certainly great to look at, and if this was a movie, it would be fantastic. It's not fantastic when being dragged along the ground by the grappling hook, and this sequence ends by shooting the truck chasing the Drakes, despite the fact it was bulletproof earlier in the sequence. But it's still fun in its own way, and Nate is starting to enjoy the adventure again. But things get a little difficult when Elena returns into the story. In Nate's eyes, he was trying to keep her safe, so he lied to her about what he was doing, and she's understandably hurt by this.
It's different this time. I have to save him. I don't even care about the treasure.
The look on your face when you walked into this room. If you're done lying to me, then you should stop lying to yourself. I got a plane to catch. You do what you have to do.
Hey, what are you doing? Go after her.
We're not done here.
Well, maybe we should be.
With the exception of the first game, Sully and Elena have always been the voices of reason for Nate, and if there's any scene that shows this off, it's this scene.
This game has a larger ratio of cutscenes to gameplay, but to be perfectly honest, when I played through this game the first time with a couple of my friends, it didn't bother us. This game actually got us more invested in the characters than any other Uncharted game before.
As you can imagine, after this scene, things go from bad to worse as the Drake brothers keep following Avery's trail. They narrow down which island Libertalia is on before catching up with the game's opening, leaving them briefly separated after the storm. They do reunite, with Nate again bringing up that the treasure doesn't seem worth it. This is highlighted, of course, by multiple notes left behind by dead adventurers and their tragic failures, which is slightly undermined since after having his tiff with Sam, the two discover Libertalia's ruins. The bodies they find start moving away from failed adventurers and instead its original colonists, where they discover Avery, his second-in-command, Thomas II, and the other pirate captains that founded the place betrayed them all, taking their treasure and killing them. Still believing the treasure is on the island, Sam wants to continue, where they are confronted by Nadine's men as they start destroying the colony in an attempt to kill the Drakes, which leads to a confrontation with Nadine personally.
The fight with Nadine. Well, fights, since there was one earlier during the auction. See, because this game came out during a time where social justice runs rampant, that has led to a few controversial things about this character.
Both this fight and the earlier one in the auction are unwinnable. In the first one, Nate could only land a hit on Nadine while encountering one of her punches. Other than that, he is woefully outmatched, despite all the brawls he did in the past against both multiple opponents at once and ones who were much larger than him. Even possibly magic, possibly mundane Talbot could be beaten in a fight, but not Nadine. Even if she is a battle-hardened, well-trained mercenary, experience should have at least made her a match for Nate rather than be easily beaten by her. I feel like the unwinnable nature of these fights are a result of Yahtzee continually calling Naughty Dog racist towards non-American whites. Sure, Yahtzee's not the only one to call out the franchise for having all of the villains in the franchise be consistently originating from countries other than America, but he is still very popular and his thoughts will reach both the developers and players' ears quicker than someone like me. It's like the developers got together in a room and thought, these accusations are getting annoying, so here's your American villain with Rafe and a badass mercenary who's both black and a woman who does not like Americans.
Can't tell you what a relief it is to run into another English speaker, even if you are American.
And she's going to easily beat Drake to a pulp with little effort. Even when both Drakes are fighting her together, they are still outmatched by her. Will you please stop calling us white supremacists now? In fact, I kind of get the feeling that might have influenced the next plot twist. Rafe confronts the Drakes and reveals Sam has been lying to Nate this whole time.
He did hard time, our time, and the guy who broke him out, Hector Alcazar, he owes him a lot of money.
Whoa, what the hell are you talking about, Nate? Hector Alcazar died in a shootout in Argentina like 6 months ago. I'm the one that got Samuel out. He spent the last 2 years tracking down a second St. Dismas cross. You know what? He did it all with me.
Huh. Sam lied about his motives. Nate lied to Elena about what he was up to. Maybe this is the game that should have been called Drake's Deception.
Nate takes a tumble off a cliff, but is rescued by Elena, who followed his trail to the island. And it's here where he comes clean about his past with Sam by finishing the flashback from earlier in the game. He and Sam had broken into the home of the old lady that bought their mother's things, who reveals to them their mother, Cassandra Morgan, had collected some treasures for her over the years, and theorized that Francis Drake had heirs. Inspired by their mother's actions, Nate and Sam decide to take on the name Drake, which I find a bit confusing as to how that honors her memory, but it's more than what we got in the last game. The next few sequences with Elena as they follow Rafe and Nadine's trail are understandably awkward as the two patch up their relationship.
I didn't tell you because I was afraid.
Afraid of what?
Of losing you. I guess I was, protecting myself. You know?
We have a lot of ground to cover.
Clever double meaning there. Though for what it's worth, Elena seems to be enjoying the adventure too.
Anyone ever tell you you have a funny idea of romantic?
Yeah, I may have heard that somewhere before.
They eventually find Two's mansion, where they discover the other founders were poisoned by Avery and Two so they could have the treasure for themselves. Are you noticing a pattern regarding this treasure? I'll give you a hint. Everyone betrays each other over it. Oh, I'm sorry, is that too subtle? Well, I guess it is, because after a lengthy segment where Nate and Elena travel down a dark cavern, nearly getting themselves blown up by Avery's traps, face the return of motion controls by being forced to shake the controller to get the character some light, fight guys wearing combat armor from Fallout 4, even though we don't like to talk about that game, in a crashed ship, reuniting with Sam, facing multiple enemies armed with RPGs, running away from another heavily armored truck before getting rescued by Sully. After all of that, Sam still wants to go after the treasure, despite everyone else thinking it's not worth it.
You and me. No offense to these guys, but they don't get it.
Actually, Sam, they do. They really do.
Okay.
You could say this series is a lot of dumb fun without a lot of substance, but it has its moments, and the character development of the original three characters, having them learn their lessons after their past adventures, come to a head here is one of them. But I suppose going through it, this would be anticlimactic, so Sam gets separated from the others and runs after the treasure. At least he apologizes for what he did. The others try to follow, but predictably, Nate is the only one who can get there. One climbing section that includes all forms of traversal later, Nate overhears Rafe and Nadine arguing about how much treasure they should get. Rafe wants to grab the rest of it from Avery's ship, but sick of having her men killed by the Drakes, Nadine just wants to take the crates they have and run. Unfortunately for Nadine, Rafe bought her men from under her, so he overrules her on this. And hey, how come Rafe can get a good hit on Nadine, but not the players? Of course, this backfires on Rafe once they confront Nate inside. They incapacitate Sam, and Nadine takes Nate's weapon, as well as Rafe's, allowing her to bolt, making her the only villain not to die at the end of an Uncharted game. Nate sees the remains of Avery and Two. It seems they betrayed each other in the end. But Rafe still doesn't quite get it, and takes one of the swords, leading to a sword fight. That's one way to shake up the final boss formula. Fitting too, given the burning ship they're fighting in. But here's an interesting thought I had. What if the final fight was with Sam instead? See, we knew betrayals were coming. It was foreshadowed hard by all the people Avery betrayed, so it's not surprising Rafe and Nadine betrayed each other in the end over the treasure, but the foreshadowing gave me the impression Sam would betray Nate over it too. It would certainly be fitting given all that's happened up to this point. But I guess the game designers decided to go a different route with this. Nate kills Rafe by dropping some treasure on him, but is unable to get a fallen beam off of Sam. Sam urges Nate to save himself, but instead Nate blows a hole in the ship, allowing it to flood, which gives them a chance to escape. It's like I said before, if a character seemingly died earlier in the story, they have a much lower chance of dying for real than other characters. So our four heroes go their separate ways, but it seems Sam left one last gift for Elena. Turns out he held on to some of the gold coins from the treasure and gave it to Elena so that they could buy out the salvage company Nate was working at earlier, so they can live a less dangerous but still adventurous lifestyle. Which I guess is what they really wanted in the end. However, we're not quite done yet, as we time jump another 15 years and end the game where it began, with Crash Bandicoot. Being played by Nate and Elena's teenage daughter, Cassie. She looks around their beach home? And uncovers some old trinkets from the past games, and is eager to hear all about it. Uncharted 4 Thief's End is tricky. On the one hand, we have character development, we have themes of betrayal, greed, and obsession. The characters have great chemistry. We have some new additions to exploration in this game. All of the voice acting is good, and the graphics, well, just look. It must have been painstaking work to get the character models just right. And it paid off, big time. The environments are likewise breathtaking, and the characters in the game sure do know it.
Wow. Spectacular.
Yeah, well, at least you got a great view, right?
Wow. It's like a postcard.
Now, when it comes to the morality of these characters, it's different than what we've had before. Unlike Roman, or Lazarevich, or Marlowe, the only result of Rafe and Nadine getting the treasure before Nate and Sam would have been they would have been a lot richer. Yeah, there's nothing supernatural about the treasure. It doesn't turn people into monsters or cause hallucinations, it's simply a treasure trove. Not to mention, with Alcazar breathing down Sam's neck being a lie, that adds a much grayer area regarding the conflict, and how many of Nadine's men were killed in the process. Nobody is really the good guy or bad guy here.
You don't deserve it.
You do? Last I checked, we're all a bunch of thieves, digging around where we shouldn't.
However, I think this was exactly the reaction the game wanted to get from the audience. Nate and Sam are not in the right by virtue of just being the protagonists, nor is Rafe automatically in the wrong, even though he does seem a bit unstable. It's just a group of people going after a treasure, which I guess is why the treasure has no curse. Although we are shown time and time again greed got the better of everyone who tried to get it, so maybe in a way it is cursed. As for the characters, well, the path Nate and Elena go on feel right. Sam is a controversial character because of his lie, but again, I think that's the point. As much as he loves his little brother, that doesn't make him a positive influence on Nate's life. I wish I had more to say about the gameplay, however, but sadly the grappling hook is really the only new thing that's been implemented. Other than individual moments like the truck chases or running from enemies while the area comes down around Nate, it's not all that different from the gameplay of previous games. Some of the buttons have been remapped with reload being triangle now, but I got used to that. Oh wait, there is one new thing, dialogue options in a few spots. There's not a lot of them. In fact, we only have about 4 in the first quarter of the game, and they don't appear anywhere else. Nor do they really change anything, so I'm not sure why they're there. Except maybe to add some player agency.
And that's a word that brings us back to where we all started, the merits of this franchise. Is it worth calling itself a game? Or should we refer to the Uncharted series as a movie in a game's body? After playing all 4 games, I can safely say the answer is... little column A, little column B. It's both.
There's a ton of effort made into making this game look cool. That's why the graphics look so good and the action sequences are big and exciting. I think the idea is to give a player a chance to play a role in a movie, if that makes any sense. That's why it's very linear, why shooting is functional but nothing too innovative. Would the Uncharted series make for a better movie than game? Well, it could certainly tell its stories as movies, but would they be better off as films? I'm gonna say no. These action sequences are possible in a live-action film, but some of the more over-the-top sequences would be too much for most studios. The trade-off is a game studio could replicate these sequences, allowing the player to play an action movie. Of course, movies and games are 2 different things, meaning it ultimately comes down to why you play games. If you play for the spectacle, then yes, this franchise is worthwhile for you. If you play for the story, then at the very least it will fit your standards. If you play for innovative gameplay with lots of player agency, then maybe you should stick with RPGs.
What the hell is this? Well, it appears in between edits I have been transformed into a colorful cartoon horse. What does that have to do with Uncharted? Nothing, that's what. Although, it will have plenty to do with what my next review is gonna be.
You should learn to climb. Climbing's always helped me.
That's life. You gotta make it count.
Oh, I so got this. Why is he stealing all this fruit? Foxes do not eat fruit.
He's not stealing, he's collecting.
Well, it's not his, and that's called stealing.
Huh.